Hi, everybody. Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. Today, I've got with me Faris, and we're going to be talking about how to sharpen your effectiveness. Now, Faris has a particularly interesting equation that he's come up based on his life experience and job experience. Before we dive into it, tell people where they can get hold of you.
Certainly. Thanks for having me, Tim, and dive straight in. People can get hold of me either at my company website, which is the company's called Sheergetto, and that's spelt SHIAGETO, so sheergetto.com, or they can find me on LinkedIn, where I spend a disproportionately large amount of my time, and they can look for Faris Aranki, and we can carry on the conversation there.
So why is your company called that?
So Sheergetto is the Japanese word for a sharpening stone.
Right.
Tim, I don't know if you've ever had a set of knives that have gone dull on you, but if you have, then you've possibly used a sheergetto, a whetstone, to sharpen your knife. And it's a lovely metaphor for what I do, me and my company do for other companies. We help sharpen them, make them a bit more effective.
So you've been on an interesting journey, haven't you? Because you started off life as a school teacher.
I did very much indeed. I used to be back in the classroom teaching 11 to 18-year-olds maths and economics. So yeah, I've come a long way since then, but I never forget my roots.
But it's actually an interesting place to start, isn't it? Because you've got to get people to do things.
You do. You have to influence people, So if you take those two subjects I was teaching, one, the economics was optional. So the children who tended to pick it, the students picked it, wanted to do it. So that was a bit easier. Whereas maths, every student out there has to learn it, whether they want to or not. And you probably remember in your own school days, as I'm saying this, there are definitely a lot of kids who don't see the use, don't find it easy. And so every day was a struggle, but still they had to learn, right? And that's really where I learned a lot of the skills around how can you take people on the journey with you? How can you land ideas with them? Because for me, that's what part of the how do you make yourself more effective? But really, when I moved into the strategic world, that became a key component. It's not just enough to have a fantastic strategy. You need other people to buy into it.
Because you went from being a school teacher,
yeah,
and then you became a strategy consultant.
Yes. Well, there was a middle step. I went and joined.
I've got energy sector written down.
Yeah, energy sector. So I tried to just move straight from the teaching world into the business world, and I had loads of doors just slam in my face, or not even take my knock on the door. Let's be honest.
Was it because of the patches on the elbows, or the?
It was the patches on the elbows and the the sort of little beard, but I kept the beard. But anyway. Yeah, they just, I applied to so many jobs, and eventually I got this letter back saying, look, you're a school teacher. Why do you why did you apply for our job in a business? So I ended up joining a graduate scheme for an energy company where I learned all about the energy industry and worked my way into the strategy team there, which is then where I got headhunted into strategy consulting.
Right. Okay. And in terms of strategy consulting, you got involved in a number of things, where people would say, "Come on in, sort the strategy out because we need to do this." And then didn't do anything.
Yeah, like I'd say 9 times out of 10 that was the case, and you'd think this is bonkers. They're paying us,
and in fact, they pay you loads of money to do it.
Loads of money, and they'd say, "Thanks for that report. We're never going to do a single thing with that." They might not be that brazen, but that's effectively what happened. They were like, "That is a brilliant answer," or they might go, "All right, thanks," and then they just never do anything because, and this is where my equation began to come in. Either they didn't understand it, or they didn't respect the quality of the ideas, or they they liked it, but there was just too much politics around them, so they could never get it agreed by others, or they loved it, everyone else was on board, but they were already doing 100 other things, so there was never a chance in hell that they would actually make it happen. So I began to realize that these were the things that were holding companies back.
And so if we walk through your equation, the first thing that you have in your equation is IQ, and the I stands for ideas.
Yes, well, intellectual quotient or ideas. So just to map out the equation for people, is say you cannot be effective, right? So success equals having IQ times EQ times FQ. So the IQ is your intellectual curation, your number of ideas. Do you have the right number of ideas? Are they good quality ideas? If not, you need to improve that area. So keep generating good strategy, good ideas. Then if we go to the second part of the equation, which is EQ, emotional intelligence, emotional quotient, are you taking others on the journey with you? So do you have enough emotional intelligence in your business? Can you?
And this is about getting consensus, is it?
This is about getting consensus, and I call it quite simply reading the room. Everyone has got those friends or those individuals who people warm to, who they understand what's going on. They can really make people get excited by things and get them to understand things and it's as though they're speaking in everybody's unique language, and that's the EQ part of it. And then the final component, this focus quotient, the FQ, is do you have enough focus to deliver on your ideas? That's referring back to what I said. Too many times, too many companies, too many individuals are trying to do too much, and it's better to do a few things really well than lots of things mediocre.
And this is about, and so that's really about the priority and in terms of the priority and where does it stack in all the other great ideas that the company needs to do?
It does. From a company level, it is certainly about prioritization and clarity of communication and removing barriers that stop people from achieving those things, right? There's so often in a company, there will be hidden barriers that really, dilute the implementation of a strategy. Take, for example, you say, well, we want everyone to adopt this new piece of software, or move over to using Teams or whatever, and then you realize that you haven't bought them all licenses. So there will be a hidden barrier. Or the one I often talk about is the photocopier in the office. It breaks down, and you just think how much additional workaround everyone has to do, and that dilutes their focus. And if you just went and bought a new photocopier, you'd get everyone back on track, but you just you don't even think of it, right? So that's at a corporate level, but also individuals. We get very easily distracted, even if we do know what we need to do. And that some of that is our own, down to our own sort of foibles, but some of it is stuff we're not even aware. When we're hungry, when we're cold, when we've got other things on our mind, and they rob us from, focusing and doing our best on the task that needs our 100% focus.
Yeah, I was on a meeting this morning with someone from Australia, and it's their second week in role, and they've given him the PC, which is so if it's running Zoom, it can't run anything else.
Okay.
So he'd go, right, I just need to look something up, and the whole thing would just grind to a halt.
Yeah. And silly stuff like that. And there probably someone somewhere goes, well, it made sense to give an old laptop to somebody, and not thinking of the impact it would have on the much wider aspects of their job.
We'll give him Fred's a laptop or something who left a year ago or something like that, and it's the whole thing just died.
Exactly. It really is. It's sometimes thinking, it's classic not thinking systems thinking, not thinking of the full flow through and impact of each of the decisions you're making.
So tell us, give us some, without giving any names or anything, explain to me where projects where you worked on something and then nothing happened.
Oh, I thought you'd go the other way, but
no, I'm going to do that next.
You'll do that next. Oh my! Come on, you talk to any consultant, they'll have hundreds of these stories. I can think of the big corporate clients that I've worked with, where we've redesigned the whole company strategy. We've done big launches, which on their own costs tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of pounds, dollars, to get everyone onto an offsite to explain the new strategy, and then never do it. And you're like, wow, why did you do that then? And there'll always be some sort of reason, we tried, or actually a new CEO joined 6 months ago, and 6 months after we developed it, and we started afresh. And you're like, you must have seen some of these things coming. You must have been just aware. So it just seems that it was just doing activity for the sake of doing activity. Now, sometimes that is the case. Again, I can tell you many a story where I've gone in to do a project, given it my all, only to discover that there was an ulterior motive that I was not privy to, and that was later revealed by some senior executive. But as my boss back then would say, well, they paid for it, so from our point of view, but life and work is a bit more than that. I find, certainly as you get older, it's not just about getting money through the door. You want to make a bit of an impact and actually see some benefit to the work you do.
Yeah, I think that there's. I mean, I'm one of these people that, if I do something, I want to see, I want to make an impact.
Yeah.
And I've never been one of those people that have just wanted to tread water just to take the money at the end of the month. But there are plenty of those.
Yeah.
I don't know if you follow. There's a cartoonist, a marketing cartoonist who's called. Who takes the word Mark and Kuhnist, basically puts the two words together, and his comes out with one every Monday. And the cartoon this week was, a marketing meeting, and the boss says, "Can you all just do something so it looks like we're doing something?"
Yeah. Action bias or boredom bias. I call it. A lot of companies that I work with just do something because they feel they should be doing something, or something shiny and new in front of them. And I have to actually stop them. I remember a client once who had an exceptionally good year, and they were a public sector client, sort of borderline. And in the board meeting, they said, well, we should probably reward our customers, considering we've done so well. It would seem really bad if we were taking this much profit. And for some reason, the idea floated around, like, let's give each customer back £1,000 or that. Yeah. And okay, that's one way to decide. And then the idea manifested, and they said, let's actually just send them each a check for £1,000. Now, I wasn't in the board meeting, but someone told me afterwards, and I said, well, hang on a minute. You didn't actually agree to that. If nothing else, just invest it and bring down the cost of the services for next year to your customers. Don't actually send everyone a check. Do you think how logistically challenging that would be? How costly that is to post a check to all your millions of customers? And the guy turned to me and said, "Oh, we've already ordered the envelopes now." And I said, and they'd all felt really, really chuffed with themselves that they'd gone ahead with this. And I was like, this is bonkers. They've clearly just made a decision. That made them feel good, and that sort of, without really thinking it through.
So give us some examples of where IQ, EQ, and FQ have worked then.
Oh, I mean, so it's very rare that we work on all three at once. I often find that a lot of companies are very well stocked in one of those, particularly IQ. They have really.
We've got loads of ideas,
got
no idea how to execute.
Yeah. But if they don't, we can help them generate more ideas, get the best out of the team, or test the ideas they have. I don't know if you've ever been involved in war games, strategic war games. They're a fantastic way to test any strategy that you've developed and see how it'll play out before, instead of investing millions to actually play it out. Why not do a war game, tabletop exercise, and see how it plays out? But by far and away, probably the biggest areas we help is in the EQ and the FQ. Let me give an example in an EQ context. Working with a large consumer goods company that had a massive problem with overstocking of its products. So they just found that they always overproduced. And they decided initially to invest in new forecasting models, new IT systems. They threw everything at it, and it still didn't fix the problem. And then they identified that actually the crucial moment, one of the reasons they were doing it was, the decision came every month on how much product they should make was made in one meeting. And it was between two departments. One was the supply chain team, who did all the modeling, and were a bunch of very introverted individuals. And the other group were the sales team, the ones who had to actually then go and sell it, who were a bunch of very extroverted individuals. And what would happen every month is the introverts would come in and say, look, we found a number. Let's say it's 100 we need to make of this product. And the sales guys, the extroverts, would listen to it and say, 100, we can sell 1,000. Let's make 1,000. And because I'm a better talker than you, we're going to make 1,000. So they would always make 1,000. They'd only sell about 100. They'd therefore have 900 extra units. They'd have to buy warehouse space. Many of the products would go off.
Or discount. Or
discount, all these things. And I said, have you ever tried fixing that conversation once a month? And they said, no. So I said, that's where the EQs come in. You're not thinking about the other party. So I worked with the introverts to talk to them about how they could sell the number or sell the in the meeting. And we spent 3 months, and after 3 months, yeah, they didn't get the number down to 100, but they got it down to about 150,
Right.
by changing how they talked to the salespeople and
Mhm.
bringing a bit more emotional intelligence. And that saved tens of millions of pounds.
I can imagine, yeah.
Yeah, and the company were like, why did we never think of this before? Now, where else is this similar problem existing in our business, where different groups are having, different kinds of conversations that are not meaning that we're sort of reaching the conclusions we should reach a lot easier.
It's a good point. When you've got introverts and extroverts in meetings.
Yeah.
I remember in leadership training when I did the Myers-Briggs.
Yeah.
And actually then taking it into teams and then using that as a way of working with people, and actually always found they got that you could get better things out of the team.
Yeah.
Because on the training, what used to happen was you used to get because it was leadership training. There would be stupid things like putting marbles down tubes and stuff, and because that's, and you had to delegate things to people and stuff.
Yeah.
But you would always get, what you would do is you would basically get your infantry would be the extroverts.
Yes.
So you'd send the extroverts in who would do half the job. And then what you'd do, and then they'd give up, and then you'd get the introverts coming in and go, yeah, if you do that, move that there, it will finish it. And it was just amazing how you could get the two to work together.
It is fascinating sometimes, and it's not like either party is necessarily sort of evil.
No one's better or winning. It's just about using people to be more efficient.
Yeah, it is, and many people think like an extrovert goes out to sort of win in a conversation or sort of thing, but many times they're completely oblivious to the impact they're having or the disimpact they're having there, and I often get teams, and it's not just about introvert versus extrovert, it's about cultural differences sometimes and different ways of thinking. I was just out in the Middle East last week working with very diverse teams doing some training, and first of all, everyone was working in a second language. English isn't their first language, so they're all coming to the table, and I said, you will all understand different things from whatever I say. Right. Let's do a really simple exercise. I'm going to read a statement, and I want you all to write down on a piece of paper what percentage you think it's likely to happen. So I said, it's probably going to rain tomorrow. And so they go around, and everyone writes down a number, and I go around the room. The first person says, well, I think it's 50%. Okay. The next person said, oh, I thought it was 30, and then we went around and we had a 0%, we had 100%. And I said, I literally read the same 6 words to you all, and you all have interpreted it completely different depending on where you come from, right? Some cultures hear the word probably and think, well, that's never going to happen. Right. Others hear probably and go, well, the fact they brought it up, it's going to happen. Right. So, and that's just 6 words. So think of a whole conversation or a whole meeting where people are bringing their own different perspectives to it. No wonder there's confusion, and we don't do enough validation, summarizing, checking in, signposting. And that's often all you need to do to bring to a team. But because they're so used to not doing it, having someone like me come in and do it, A, feels weird, but B, makes a massive impact.
Yeah, there's a famous leadership test that people do, which is where they get people to, it's quite often used in interviews, where they get people to come in and sit in a room, and you've got, basically there's 4 people, and they say, here's a spreadsheet, you've got to go in and negotiate whatever the thing is. What they don't tell you is the spreadsheet, each of the spreadsheets got different versions.
Okay, yeah.
So what happens is that everybody goes in with different information. And the idea is that when you go in, you go, I've got a spreadsheet. What version you got?
Yeah. It's true, right? Too often we're just too task focused, or just got to get this done, and don't stop and go, hang on a minute. What's going on? What have you got? What have I got? How are you feeling? What's going on in your world? You actually focused on this? No, I'm not. I just had some terrible news before I went to the room. Okay, right. Let's just stop. Right. That's more important. But yeah.
So summarize your equation again.
So success equals IQ times EQ times FQ. So if you know where you're going, and that's where the strategy comes for us, right? You've got to be very clear where you want to achieve. Then you've got to have the right amounts of IQ, EQ, and FQ. And here's the crucial thing: you cannot cover them up, right? They're a multiplication, not addition. So you cannot say, "Don't worry, we don't need the EQ because we've got loads of IQ." I'm sorry, anything times 0 equals 0.
Great point. Great point.
Because I've seen that too often, and it can go either way, right? I've worked in environments and certain cultures, forget the IQ, are just too nice, right? They have too much EQ where everyone agrees with each other and everyone is so accommodating that actually, but they're not, and the 0 is elsewhere. And I say, well, that's not enough. You cannot just have a bunch of nice people. Otherwise, what are they going to achieve if they don't have great ideas and great focus?
Faris, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us. I love your equation and great stories as well. Thank you so much. Remind people where they can get hold of you.
Tim, it's been a real pleasure, and love to carry on talking to all your listeners, watchers. So they can get hold of me on LinkedIn. Look for Faris Aranki. I think there's only one of us, like me. Or they can come and have a snoop around shiagetto.com. So www.shiageto.com. If, like me, you're ever bored, just Google Shiagetto, not just my website. You'll learn about the Japanese culture of knife sharpening. It's fascinating. There is a lot of documentation out there about it.
I did actually do that after we spoke, did our preparation. I thought, what on earth is that? So I Googled it, and yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's a funny story. I get a lot of spam on my website. I have a sort of contact me form, and I'm sure you do on yours, Tim. And I think 6 months into the business, I got this email with broken English that I thought I just ignored because I thought it was just spam. And it basically said, I want to buy your website. And it kept coming back. So eventually I replied, and it turned out it was a Japanese company that wanted to launch a English language version, and they were entering Japan. And they actually sold knives. So I said, okay, sure, give me $1 million, it's yours. And that's when we broke down.
And it didn't go any further.
We had a little bit of negotiation, but they weren't sharp enough for me. So it's still owned by me.
Right. Thank you so much, Faris, for coming on, and I really appreciate it. And keep in touch.
Thank you very much, Tim. Likewise.